It was a warm summer afternoon, and the sun, beginning to set on the horizon, cast a golden glow over the back porch of Brian's house. He was staring absently at the garden, while the distant sounds of laughter and conversations from the family barbecue mixed with the rustling leaves in the breeze. Everything felt calm and familiar until Emily, his brother's wife, appeared at his side with a glass of wine in hand. Emily, his older brother's wife, had always been a striking presence at family gatherings. Her natural charm and undeniable beauty made her admired by everyone, but Brian had never paid much attention to it, until that moment. Something about her seemed different that afternoon. Her light dress swayed in the breeze, revealing part of her legs. "Did you know I've always found you different?" Emily asked, her voice soft but laced with a suggestive tone that made Brian's heart race. He turned to her, trying to maintain his composure, but her eyes, locked onto his, made it clear this wasn't just a casual conversation. Brian felt a warmth rise in his body, a wave of confusion and unexpected desire all at once. He laughed nervously, trying to push away any improper thoughts. But something significant was about to happen. If you want to know what happened between Brian and Emily, stay until the end of this tale of love and betrayal. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so you don't miss our content. "Different how?" Brian asked, trying to keep his voice light. She laughed softly as she took another step closer to him. The distance between them became minimal. The air was charged with electricity, and what she was about to do would leave Brian completely off balance. "I never said anything out of respect for your brother," Emily continued, her fingers lightly touching his arm, as if testing the limits of the situation. "But now it's different." Her touch, as subtle as a breeze, sent shivers down Brian's spine. He knew he should pull away, that this moment was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But at the same time, Brian couldn't tear his gaze away from Emily's eyes. Brian glanced around, realizing the back porch was deserted, far from any curious eyes. The sounds of laughter from the barbecue seemed distant, as if they belonged to another world. There on that porch, he and Emily were alone. Emily leaned in closer, the sweet fragrance emanating from her skin overwhelming Brian's senses, and he felt his body betray his mind. And before he could find the words to interrupt the situation, Emily whispered something that made his heart stop for a moment. "No one needs to know." Those words echoed in his mind, and although he tried to remain steady, something about that closeness began to awaken sensations he hadn't expected. Her soft perfume mixed with the aroma of grilled meat from the barbecue, creating an almost intoxicating atmosphere. Emily moved in a little closer, just enough for Brian to feel the warmth of her body near his. She was still smiling, but there was something more in that smile, something that made his heart race and his thoughts waver. Her voice, soft and teasing, enveloped him in a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He couldn't ignore what was happening there, but he also knew how dangerous it was. "Brian," she suddenly whispered, her lips almost brushing against his ear, "have you ever wondered why we never had this conversation before?" Brian took a deep breath, trying to maintain control. "Emily, I really don't know if this is a good idea, my brother," he began, but his voice faltered, his words sounding weak and unconvincing. It was at that moment that a stronger breeze swayed the linen curtain on the porch, and without them realizing it, the edge of the curtain snagged on the light dress Emily was wearing. When she tried to step away from Brian, she felt the resistance, and in a sudden movement, the curtain tugged hard, sliding her dress off her shoulder. In an instant, her bare shoulder and part of her back were exposed. Brian froze. His eyes involuntarily turned to Emily's smooth, soft skin, and he quickly looked away, feeling heat rise in his face. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, he stammered, but the words seemed to lose their meaning as he struggled to maintain his composure. Emily, on her part, let out a soft, almost conspiratorial laugh. "Oops," she said playfully, pulling the fabric back into place with a calmness that suggested she knew exactly what she was doing. "Looks like the porch has its own plans." Brian didn't know what to say. The embarrassment was palpable, but at the same time, that brief glimpse, the accidental touch of Emily's hand as she adjusted her dress, Everything seemed to heighten the tension between them. "Maybe it's better if we go back inside," Brian suggested, trying to find an escape from the awkward and disconcerting moment. But Emily, with a teasing look, moved in closer again, gently touching Brian's arm. "Oh, Brian," she murmured, her eyes shining with something he couldn't fully decipher. "You didn't think that was an accident, did you?" Brian could barely control his thoughts as he tried to figure out what Emily was about to reveal. Her closeness made his heart race faster. Then, she leaned in even closer, her lips almost touching his ear as she softly whispered, "I've always wondered what it would be like to kiss you." The whisper made his heart race and sent a tremor through his entire body, like a spark igniting a fire he could no longer contain. He slowly turned his face toward her, and their eyes met in a moment filled with unspoken desire. "Emily, we shouldn't," Brian began, but his voice betrayed the insecurity he felt. She simply smiled, that seductive smile that disarmed him. "Sometimes, not doing what we should is what we want the most," she replied, her voice thick with insinuation. Without another word, Emily moved even closer, her lips mere millimeters from his, almost kissing him. The world around them seemed to disappear, and all that existed was that moment. Brian knew he was about to cross a line from which there would be no return, but his thoughts of resistance faded when she kissed him, gently at first, as if testing the waters, then more intensely, revealing the pent-up desire inside her. He responded to the kiss without thinking, lost in the sensation, his hands sliding involuntarily around her waist, pulling her closer. Their breaths were shallow, and the intense emotions mingled with the quickening beat of their hearts. When the kiss finally ended, Emily looked at him, her eyes sparkling with hidden intentions. "I knew it would be good, but I didn't know it would be this good," she whispered, her tone low but laden with desire. Brian could barely find words. He was confused but at the same time craving more. "Emily, this we need to think," he started to say, unsure how to continue. "Think," she interrupted with a mischievous smile. "Are you sure that's what you want right now?" She leaned in again, as if to kiss him once more. But at that moment, Brian's phone began to ring, echoing across the porch and breaking the spell between them. He pulled away abruptly, the sound bringing him back to reality. "Damn, it's my phone," he said, rushing to grab it. Emily, maintaining her composure, stepped back, adjusting her dress. "Don't worry, Brian. We can finish what we started another time," she said with a gleam in her eyes. "You know it's going to happen, don't you?" With that, she turned to leave, leaving an air of expectation and provocation lingering behind. "So, as I was saying, do you really think this dinner was a coincidence?" Emily asked with a slight smile as the two walked side by side through the square where they had casually met. In reality, it was anything but accidental. Emily had suggested the dinner to a group of mutual friends, knowing Brian would be there. It was the perfect excuse for them to spend some time together, away from the watchful eyes of family. "Coincidences rarely happen when you're involved," Brian replied, looking at her with a mix of admiration and caution. He knew this meeting wasn't by chance, but the attraction between them was becoming harder to ignore. "I feel like I need to see you, Brian," she confessed, her voice sounding more vulnerable than before. "With each passing day, it gets harder not to think about you. I can't hold back." She stopped, facing him directly, her expression serious. "And you? Do you think about me?" He took a deep breath, battling the whirlwind of emotions. "It's impossible not to," he admitted, looking into her eyes. "But what we're doing, Emily, you know this won't end well." "Maybe not," she replied, stepping closer once again, her hand gently touching his arm. "But when you feel what we're feeling, it's hard to think about what's right or wrong. Don't you think?" The tension between them kept growing, with more and more secret meetings, stolen kisses, and conversations filled with restrained desires. They both knew what they were risking, their families, their reputations, but something stronger seemed to pull them toward these encounters full of emotions and a longing for more. In one of those meetings, hidden in a discreet corner of the park, Emily turned to Brian and confessed, her voice trembling slightly, "I'm getting really caught up in this with you, and it scares me." She looked away for a moment, as if she were revealing something deeply personal. I don't know what to do anymore. Part of me wants to keep going, but you know what this could mean for us, don't you? Brian was just as torn. The feelings that had developed between them could no longer be ignored, but the consequences, he didn't know if he was ready to face them. Emily, he began, but his voice faltered. He was confused. I feel the same way, but where does this end? We can't just run from this. The silence between them was heavy with tension. They both knew they were on a path of no return. Could they keep this a secret? Or would someone find out, and everything would fall apart? As they looked at each other, lost in their thoughts and dilemmas, the question lingered in the air. What did the future hold for them? Would they be able to leave everything behind and follow their hearts? Or were they destined to face the inevitable consequences of their choices? And what about you? What do you think will happen to Emily and Brian? Should they continue this secret relationship or end it before it's too late? How would you handle such a delicate situation? Leave your comment and share your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. A kiss, and see you in the next story.